Today's date is March 5th, 2025. We're here for the Warren County Oral History Project, and my name is Jacob Stickle. I'm the archival assistant here at Warren County, and I'm here with
Roy Miller of Lebanon, Ohio, out near Waynesville, actually.
Fair enough. When were you born?
I was born June 11, 1964.
All right.
In the Middletown Hospital.
Oh, in Middletown?
Yeah.
Why Middletown? That feels a little far away.
Well, at the time, that was a closer hospital than Dayton or Cincinnati, I guess. We'll have to ask mom or dad, but yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah, I know it's been growing up incredibly ever since. So
Yeah.
How did you and your family get here?
I'm not sure exactly how we all originally got here.
Mm-hmm.
My mom and dad have lived. I've lived here my whole life. My mom and dad have lived here their whole life that I know of. My dad's been gone 32 years. My mom's still alive. My parents are Fred and Ruth Miller. Mom's family, she was an Earnhardt. Quite a few Earnhardts around in the Lebanon, Springboro area. Our family, dad's family, there was Jim, Fred, my dad, Jim, Fred, Lee, and Jerry, 4 boys. And where they lived was on 122, where the vocational school is now.
Oh, right.
So our family sold the vocational school land to them back in about 1976 or 7 or somewhere there, mid to late 70s.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That's nice. Yeah, because that is right in the middle of the. That's fun.
Yeah.
That's fun.
And actually, I can remember as a kid because Dad farmed that property when it was still farmed.
Mm-hmm.
So I can remember Mom would pack up my sister and I, Becky and me, and we go do picnic lunch out in the field. So I can remember where we would pull in. We'd go up 48 and we'd pull into a spot there, and I can still see him in a combine or a tractor or something like that out in the field there where the vocational school is.
Oh, it's wild to be driving past there and you're thinking, wait,
Yeah,
that looks familiar.
I can still see it. Yeah.
Oh man, that's cool to think about though.
Yeah.
That's cool, and they're using it out there, and that's good.
Yep.
What were your parents like?
Well, like I say, Dad, he was farming almost full time when he was in high school. And Mom, her parents, Mom was an only child. Her parents had a farm out on Pekin Road, and although they lived in town on Mound Street.
Oh, so they just vacationed in their farm?
Yeah, I would say it probably goes back to kind of some reality of, life in town might have been a little bit better with some conveniences that you didn't have out on the farm.
True.
And both her parents had grown up out in the country on the farm, and they wanted to be in town, maybe where there was electricity and maybe even county water or something at the time, instead of some of the things that you had to struggle with out on the farm.
Oh yeah.
I've never actually asked Mom about that to know why they lived in town, but they owned the property out there. And there were several on that. Her dad, and her mom. They were all part of, like I said, Earnhardts and Irons and Beans, and there was quite a bit of farm family property, cousins and such out there. Dad's family, the Millers and the Brants, and even if you go back a generation, then kind of down the other side of the tree there, they owned Brant's Hardware, so we were related to them. And then, as we were talking right before we started the interview, Al Brant, who was one of the first sheriffs of the county. So they owned, some farm and property around. So
it's very cool. I bet we could find depending on the time frame, if I could find the plat in the back where you were looking at the maps earlier.
Yeah,
Really cool to see.
yeah.
Did you have any siblings growing up?
I have one younger sister, Becky. Her last name Osborne now. And the Osbornes, I don't know much going back more than their parents' generation. They were from Waynesville.
Oh, okay. Is she? Did she marry into the Tina Osborne? Is she really kind of loosely related to her?
I don't. There's 6 boys in that family.
Oh boy.
Yeah, my brother-in-law, her husband Ken. He has 5 brothers.
Goodness. Well, maybe she married. Into
Yeah, and
as well.
I kind of lose track of all of them, even though I grew up with them. Showed animals, 4-H at the fair, all that time.
I got you.
Even when we were kids. So that when I was a kid, that would have been in the 70s. I graduated high school, Springboro High School, 1982.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh,
So yeah, one younger sister. Yeah.
I got you. I just asked about the Osbornes because we talked to an Osborne right when I first started, and around 23 in the summer. So I was like, I wonder if they're related. You never know. And I suppose you said both your parents farmed. Did your
Dad farmed full time. Mom, when she was younger, worked for a few number of years up in Dayton, and I can't remember what company or such. Sort of as receptionist, accounting, I believe it was. She talks about riding the bus to Dayton and back. Yeah.
Ugh.
And I don't know if that was a daily ride, because then I think she also talks about maybe having an apartment in Dayton for a short period of time.
Interesting. That's originally where I'm from.
Yeah. And I think I'm getting that story correct there. Yeah.
Okay. Well, there's always the classical ones up there, like NCR, Frigidaire, and all that. So
I think this might almost, maybe, but not quite, predate some of that.
I got you.
But I can be, yeah. But Dad farmed. He even was farming full time when he was in high school.
Goodness.
Before then, he had to go off to military service. He graduated high school. Let's see. He would have graduated in 40.
Yeah.
About 45 or 46, I think.
Oh.
So World War II would have been going on.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't serve in World War II. He served during the Korean War, but he was in Germany.
Oh, keeping the peace.
Yeah, he was stationed in Germany. He wasn't over in the actual battle.
Oh.
Yeah, in Korea.
How long was he over there?
That I'm not real sure of.
I gotcha.
As far as period of years, was it just 1 or 2 or 4 or 5? Yeah, I don't know.
I gotcha. Usually you don't really think about people over in Germany when they get thrown into the Korean War. So it's a bit of a fun twist. Not fun, but you know what I mean.
It's an interesting spin, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Did you end up farming up until like when you started in high school too, or?
Well, as in, I mean, that's pretty much. I can remember. I mean, I've farmed basically forever. After graduating high school, then I went to Ohio State.
All right.
Graduated there, and actually I went to UC for a year. Went to University of Cincinnati for 1 year. Then I transferred to Ohio State. Graduated in March of '87. Was fortunate enough, I guess you could say, to be able to buy some farm property in the summer of '87, when the farm economy was really crummy.
Oh.
So you could still buy farmland in Warren County
Mm-hmm.
for farmland price, because the development insanity had not yet really skyrocketed.
True.
So I bought 120 acres on Utica Road from the Runyon family. Still own it today. But yeah, looking back, it's like, wow, somehow we should have scraped up millions and millions and millions of dollars and bought everything we could. because
Yeah.
at those prices I was able to buy. I think it was $1,200 an acre, and it was bare farmland.
Oh, wow. I mean, just having the bare farmland. I mean,
Yeah,
people
no, there were no
developing.
buildings on the 10 acres of the house and farm and barns and such had already been split out. Versus now, if you buy farmland for farmland prices, you're basically paying development price for it, and it's somewhere around $17,000-18,000 an acre. Yeah,
Yeah, I believe it.
it's
Talking to what really made that real for me was going down to talk to Goodwin's.
Oh
and
yeah,
his father. So I went down to Pleasant Plain, and he was showing me around and seeing all the development happening down there towards Mason, especially.
Yeah.
It's,
yep.
yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty
Well, and we were
wild.
visiting about the Steiners,
Mhm.
Paul and Rosemary, down in that area, also in that Mason area. Yeah, and I can think of the Lewis family, and they were down, and I know they've sold some farms. Mark Lewis, he was on the board of Ag Urban with me. We were visiting about that a little bit, but yeah, he had sold some farm property. Wow. 15-20 years ago for crazy money,
Wow.
and just because they were getting swamped.
Yeah, I mean between 2000 and now, I mean an extra 100,000 residents, I believe.
Oh
Something like
yeah,
that.
yeah. It's so yeah, trying to buy but it's also a squeeze nationwide.
Yeah.
It maybe isn't exactly at the same kind of level that we're talking numbers here, but it's just the suburban sprawl and development pressure of all farmland in the country is just a huge issue.
Mm.
Yeah.
It's surprising how fast it's happening.
Yep.
But how was growing up here?
Yeah, so we grew up, mom and dad, like I say, they were kind of in that 48, 122 Pekin Road area. That's kind of where Earnhardt's and Miller's sort of were, sort of in between Lebanon and Springboro.
Yeah.
Maybe, kind of towards Ridgeville, just that area. Mom and dad, they were married in 57. They bought some property on Township Line Road.
Mm-hmm.
There was a small house there that, that's where they lived. I lived there, I guess, till we were about 1 year old, till I was about 1 year old or so.
Oh, yeah.
And then they bought the adjoining farm that comes off of 122.
Mm-hmm.
And I just now forgot the guy's name that owned it. Doggone it, because I was trying to remember that. I'll think of it later. But anyways, then we moved there, so then that would have been approximately 1965, 66.
Mm-hmm.
I currently live there. I did live for a period of years, other than being at Ohio State, I lived for about 10 years on the farm where Mom lives now. We switched houses about 25 years ago.
Oh.
Yeah. So I had lived over there at that farm for about 10 years, kind of at the corner of Pekin and Springboro Road. And that was the farm that her parents had owned. So Mom and Dad bought the place on Township Line Road. Then they were able to buy the place directly adjoining it on 122. Then, I mentioned the family farm there where the vocational school is.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when they sold that, so then my dad was one of 4 boys, so Jim, Fred, Lee, and Jerry. And they sold the farm. Of course, they divided it all. Uncle Jim and his wife, Aunt Helen, they bought some farm property up in the Washington Courthouse area in Fayette County.
Mm-hmm.
With some of that money, and Mom and Dad used their share of some money to buy additional farmland right there, kind of on Township Line Road and Pekin Road. And Uncle Lee and Aunt Jan, they invested theirs. Uncle Jerry invested his in some of his business he had out in California, out in Beverly Hills. He was
Unexpected. Okay, Uncle Jerry.
yeah. But then I always say I can remember the moving truck, even though I was only a year old, I can still remember being in the car with my grandma, my mom's mom, and she was taking me to town to spend the night because they were moving. Mm-hmm. And I can still see the moving truck, pulling out of the house up there. And that's how that is. But yeah, we've lived out there now for, 60 years.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
How was coming home from OSU? How was that an experience? Because you didn't have the farm yet. Did you just work the farm there?
Well, Mom and Dad we had quite a bit of farmland even then. Probably had somewhere in the neighborhood of 575 to 600 acres, something like that. We used to feed a lot of cattle. We fed 700 or 800 cattle a year, and also had hogs. We'd feed 1,000 hogs a year or thereabouts. But that was pretty typical in the 70s and early 80s. Even back in the 50s, 60s, 70s. Farms then just weren't what they look like today. They were way more diversified. They didn't grow just corn and beans, and maybe didn't grow soybeans at all. That didn't really become too terribly popular as a crop until sort of through the 70s, and then they really exploded in the 80s.
Okay.
But everybody had, corn, maybe soybeans, wheat, oats, hay, cattle, beef cattle, dairy cattle, hogs. They had a little bit of everything. But then the 80s really kind of crashed the farm economy pretty big. Partially because the 70s were awful good. I don't remember that. I was a kid in school. I was just the guy out there baling hay and straw. And I do remember being about maybe, say, 10 years old. I was probably driving a tractor at 10.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Maybe driving the tractor that was pulling the baler while the guys are stacking on the wagons. I do know then we also used to row cultivate our corn, and I cultivated every acre. And I would have been, I was the guy driving the tractor every day in June while the corn was still young. So I do remember that a lot. Yeah, a lot.
Yeah, about you working when you're young. I get it.
Yeah. And so, Ohio State, majored in agriculture while I was there. And we were also amazingly fortunate enough to buy a neighboring farm kind of in that difficult 80s that was right next door on Township Line Road in Pekin in the Wayne Township side. It was owned by Bill and Don Asbury, two brothers. They had also both served on the Soil and Water Conservation Board supervisors back in the day.
I didn't know that. Let's see if I can keep an eye for names.
Yeah, they're both gone now. I remember them as a kid tremendously because at the time they were just two bachelor brothers living together, but they had airplanes, which I loved airplanes, and we lived close enough to Waynesville Airport that there was always planes going over our farm, just always circling around.
I was gonna say.
So I remember that about them. Yeah.
And airplanes would keep them busy too, especially around right there. Too.
Yeah. And Waynesville Airport, they're still there. And
I was growing up in the area. The community itself.
Yeah, the community itself. I do remember there being just a fair amount more focus on just farm and agricultural business and everything about that, because there was more. There was a lot more farming. I can remember this good friend of mine who's a year older than me, Chuck DeRay, who was a policeman in the Lebanon police force as an adult for a long, long time.
I might have run into him come Larry Sims' retirement.
And but anyways, he lived about, I'll say 2 or 3 miles, probably about 3 miles away on Hathaway Road. Well, we could ride our bikes back and forth between our house. Well, that makes me think of also occasionally I would even ride my bike all the way over to our other farm at the corner of Pekin and Springboro. That's like 4.5 miles away.
Yeah, good chunk.
Well, I could do that in high school. Well, it's entirely different now. There's houses everywhere between here and there. And one day I was driving a tractor over there and back, and of course I was, half bent out of shape about all the dang mailboxes and all the traffic. Mm-hmm. So one day I counted the mailboxes, and I think there was 141. And I could remember in my head well enough when I was in high school what was there, and I counted them in my head from memory. There were 14.
Oh.
Yeah.
Huge difference.
Yeah, and that doesn't include a couple of little additional subdivision streets that dive off of Pekin Road, or some ones that might be on Utica or Hathaway or 48 that are only maybe a half mile away that create huge amounts of traffic now compared to what it used to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, the communities, it's just everything was quite a bit more, it's just farm and small business oriented. Yeah.
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 Interesting. Well, small business oriented. I mean, given all the antiques coming out of Waynesville.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Did you always want to be in the farming industry?
Sort of, but I don't know. I wanted to be more kind of either in engineering or something to do with possibly planes, or if you want to go back to when you're a little kid. Well, I wanted to be an astronaut.
Yeah.
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 So,
I get it.
which, interesting, of course, Neil Armstrong lived in the Lebanon area at one point in time.
Yeah.
We occasionally had 4-H meetings at their farm because one of his kids, Mark, who's a year older than me, but they went to Lebanon, they had cattle. Well, I showed cattle. Occasionally we would have 4-H meetings over there. But I remember at one of those meetings, they had a few cows, and we knew that one of those cows had a calf, but for some reason we needed to go out and find it because they didn't know where it was. So here we are after the meeting, a few of us, me and my dad, and maybe a couple others, but Mr. Armstrong, Neil Armstrong, and we're out there walking a field together looking for a cow and calf. And you can look up and there's the moon. And I was old enough to know it's like, oh, this guy, he walked on the moon. Yeah, here I am out here. I would have been a young teenager.
Yeah, that is
just kind of an interesting little twist.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's ironic and forgive the pun, but more down to earth for just to be walking around looking for the.
But that makes me think of something else. Then maybe when I was about 5, would have been when he did. I remember Dad waking me up one night, say, "Hey, there's Americans, there's astronauts, they're landing on the moon. Come down here and watch the TV." It was being broadcast. So that's why I say, well, golly, if I go back to when I was a little kid, I wanted to be an astronaut. Well, there's why. But then later on,
there's Armstrong.
There's Neil Armstrong. How about that?
That's wild.
So as a kid, we all have those great dreams. Farming. It was sort of like, I kind of like to, but engineer. My Uncle Jim owned Mound Steel over in Springboro, and then also worked for Dave Steel, which was formerly in Lebanon. And then Dad's dad, so Harvey Miller, owned the Oregonia Bridge Company.
Oh.
So, I don't know, just kind of engineering is sort of a thing,
It's sort of pervasive in the family.
Yeah. My cousin Tom, engineer. So, it's sort of it's part of the family, yeah.
I gotcha. What lifelong hobbies did you pick up?
There again, as a kid, loved model railroad, model trains. So I was big into that as a kid. Of course, showed animals in the fair, at the county fair.
Yup.
Went to Springboro High School. for some reason, I remember that I graduated 9th out of 182. But yeah, there was like 182 kids in Springboro.
Okay, yeah, that's a big difference now.
Today, because my nieces and nephews went to Springboro, Mason, Michael, Amanda, and Emily, and they graduated from there, and I think there's, my gosh, there's, I don't know, 400 or 500 kids in the class. And that's already been like in the neighborhood of 10 years ago. Emily would have been the youngest. She graduated, wow, probably 6 years ago, or maybe 7 or 8 years ago already.
Oh man, I mean, given Austin Landings right there and that whole area between them.
Oh yeah, that didn't exist. As a kid, high school, I can remember as a teenager, it's like, oh, well, we'll go up to the Dayton Mall to this or that.
Yeah.
Well, that whole road from 741 up to Dayton Mall, there wasn't anything there except the Springboro Airport. That Dayton General South.
Yeah.
There was nothing there. It was all fields. And now it's just, it looks like New York City. So, yeah.
It's been built up, yeah.
Yeah. I that makes me think of another thing. In high school, maybe this gets completely off of any of the subject you want to be on. In high school in the 80s, we actually had the teachers' lounge had a smoking section.
Yeah.
There was actually in between classroom breaks, some kids would go outside, and that was the smoking section for the kids. Yeah.
I mean, I always heard about the bathroom being the smoking section, but sure.
Yeah, I mean, it did. And actually, we could walk. This was the old high school before the new one was built up on the top of the hill. So what's now I don't know if it's elementary school in downtown Springboro, but during lunch, we could, if you wanted to, you could actually walk uptown in Springboro,
Yeah.
5-minute walk to the K&W, get a cheeseburger for lunch.
Great. Yeah. That's about it.
Yeah. So I don't know, just stuff like that. Yeah, it doesn't happen like that today. Yeah. Let me see if I can turn that thing off.
I gotcha. I've been getting a lot of spam lately.
Yeah.
Too, and
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Oh, no worries.
But I loved model trains and railroads when I was a kid. Still kind of do. Yeah. That's still nice. But I definitely love airplanes, aviation.
I feel like you almost have to around here.
Yeah.
Aside from the growth in population, how else have things changed from when you were growing up?
Well, our little interruption here that we just had, these
yeah.
things, everybody's got that glued to their face now. And yet, we didn't have any of the computers and cell phones and electronics and, almost everybody has air conditioning, central air, maybe even in their house or their place of work. And, yeah, we didn't have that.
How has it changed your work?
The farm. So we do a lot of things with auto-steered GPS guidance on the tractors.
Oh.
I could, if I was really into it, I could have way more than just the tractors driving themselves. I could have, and I do this when I custom hire like the co-op to do fertilizer spraying. It's variable rate. So it's not just one straight application. It's varied across the field. Certain parts of the field don't need any fertilizer, and some maybe need more than what's considered average. And that's all because it's grid sampled on maybe 2.5 acre grids. Some guys are doing it on 1 acre grids. So you're literally prescription farming. What you're doing instead of just one basic rate across the whole field, you can vary your population of your seeds that you're planting based on your yield history, which is in the computer in the combine. It's telling you your varying bushels and your varying moisture and all that. As you go across the field, it's telling you how your corn, your soybean, your wheat yield is. You can watch it go up and down, and then you generate a kind of a map that then you can study and say, well, why is this area of the field doing better than this one? Well, maybe it's because of soil type, but maybe it's because of drainage, or maybe it's some long-term fertility issue you've got to correct.
Wow.
Yeah. Plus, speaking directly to farming, just the cost, the expense of farming. The equipment is just, it's ridiculously bonker crazy, the cost of equipment. Of course, if you were to go back in time 75 to 100 years and ask those guys, well, they'd say, "Oh, the cost is crazy." You know, we used to raise our own seed and our own horses, and now we got to buy these tractors.
Definitely a bit of a switch.
You know, but still, just the concentration of farming into large operations and large equipment and the substitution of a lot of technology. Yeah.
It's going to be difficult to, I know right of repair is an issue over there, especially given new tractors, and it's going to be difficult to even deal with that sort of.
Yeah, it is, and some of that legal wrangling that's going on, it's being watched across many different industries, because even just think, for someone who's in farming, but it's almost like your washer and dryer and your refrigerator and your stove. Well, they've almost got more followers on Facebook than you do, because they want to interconnect it with the stupid internet and the Wi-Fi. It's like, all we need for the stupid thing to do, I just want the washing machine to wash my clothes. I don't need to have some TikTok relationship with it on Wi-Fi.
It was wild.
So on John Deere and the right to repair, they've got these extremely complicated software packages in there controlling all these computers and electronic sensors and everything. It's the same thing in your refrigerator and your washing machine. There's some significant software, electronic technology packages within there to supposedly make it work better, and some of it is nicer, but yet at the same time, it's like some of this stuff, I just need to push the button and have it work.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with the tractors. It's like, a lot of this, that's really nice, until it doesn't work, and the computer doesn't talk to the planter, doesn't talk to the satellite, and doesn't talk to the cloud storage somewhere, or the who knows where that is. And now it's this 75-degree beautiful day, and you're stuck in the middle of this 100-acre field, and nothing's happening. Versus some older tractors, and let alone I made reference to 100 years ago when you used to use a horse and then you changed to a tractor. Well, you just keep on going because you were in charge. Now the computer's in charge.
Kind of takes it out of your hands.
Yeah. It provides, and when I made mention about variable rate and all this data that I can collect, and it's fantastic information. But sometimes then, and of course, this advent of artificial intelligence, it's just going to get worse. At some point, sometimes the computer's making decisions. It's like, no, that's wrong. I can see what's going on here.
It's supposed to be. At least it's consistently wrong.
Yeah.
Ideally.
So I mean, yeah, and I even mentioned before we started, I'm like, well, I'm not really that old enough yet to be someone old, but I can remember all this. And in some ways, my life kind of hasn't changed too much, because I still full-time farming out there, sort of doing what we've always done. I'm just using different technology and equipment to get it done.
Yeah, it's very different when I was talking to the Steiners. They would just discuss just what was way back in the.
Oh yeah, because Paul and Rosemary, they could remember back, my parents' time, and like you said, the 50s and 60s, maybe even the 40s.
Very different times.
Yeah. And so a lot of times in some ways I make this comment: the older I get, the more I want to be Amish, just because of these silly things, But yet at the same time, some of the style that I live, compared to a lot of my friends, I'm almost the closest thing to Amish that they might know, even though it's not even close, Yeah. But folks come out and visit us on the farm, and they're just amazed, But the open fields and the size of things. And some of the things I deal with even just in our house, to just kind of keep the house going along, that they don't give a thought to,
Yeah.
So, I mean, because like in that case, and it's not that unusual, we've got our own well. Well, that means I've got my own well pump that I have to be in charge of. If the water goes out, I don't just call the county and say, hey, county water, get out here and fix this. No, I got to go down to the basement and figure out why the pump went out,
Right.
or the pressure switch died, something like that.
A little bit more self-sustaining.
Yeah, it is.
Fair.
Yeah, it is. It is. I'm not off grid, but I'm definitely more independent than someone who's connected into all, county water and county gas and all that sort of thing.
Right, than just being in the city.
Yeah.
And what were you doing in the 90s? You mentioned it, agri-urban.
Yeah, agri-urban. So I graduated college in '87. I was elected to the board of agri-urban, which was the farmers co-op in Warren County. We also covered parts of Claremont and Brown County. Unfortunately, I can't recall the name of maybe the precursor organization to agri-urban. I'm sure it was around when I was a kid. It just didn't mean anything to me. So I was elected to agri-urban board of directors in I think it was 93. It was about the time that, plus or minus a year, that my youngest son was born. I have two boys, Austin and Harrison. Austin was born in 91. Harrison was born in 94. My wife has two boys, Alec and Evan. Alec was born in 92. Evan was born in 95. And then together we also have another son, Stephen. He was born in 96. But we've adopted him we were guardian foster parents for him.
Oh,
but anyways, agri-urban.
A lot of different kids running around.
Yeah. Agri-urban, I was elected to the board there, I think in 93. I served 2 terms there until it merged into Southwest Landmark, which was a combination of agri-urban, Clinton Landmark in Clinton County, Clark Landmark in Clark County, and then a joint venture that we had that we called Ag Tech, and that covered Greene and Fayette counties. So what we covered, then Southwest Landmark was like from 99 to about 2011, I think. And there again, it was a farmer co-op. So I'd served on both of those boards. Also served as a trustee at Lebanon Presbyterian Church in the 90s for 1 term. That would have been 3 years. Served also as an elder there in approximately, for 1 term, 3 years. That was approximately 2006, 7, 8, somewhere in there.
What was your purpose, so to say, for the agri-urban getting into the?
Why did it merge? It just merged. Just kind of that's kind of been it's consolidation, kind of like consolidation of a lot of things. Just slowly happened over time,
Yeah.
I don't want to necessarily the big get bigger or you get out.
Sure.
It's just kind of normal growth. Just kind of like how Walmart has just slowly grown from being 1 or 2 or 3 stores there in Arkansas. Now they pretty much control everything and have for a long period of time. Versus maybe when I was a kid, there was all sorts of little mom and pop type small businesses.
Yeah.
That provided all the little necessities, and instead of now just one great big giant retailer. And of course Walmart, then of course now you have Amazon and all the other online places that don't even have a store. It's just, you click and order and my God, it's here tomorrow. How do they even do that? So, and you can get anything and everything. So it was the same type of overall thought process and business model of going from small and local to maybe a little more regional to much bigger regional, maybe even national. But yeah, it was farm supply co-op. Provided fertilizer and seed and herbicides and all feed, those type of inputs, and then also provided grain merchandising, to sell the crops. And then Southwest Landmark was just all of that on a bigger scale.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And how was the Lebanon Presbyterian Church as a trustee? What was your
trustee is the committee in charge of the facilities. They're the ones in charge of making sure that the building is cared for and the roof doesn't leak and the water heater and the furnace doesn't blow up.
Yep.
Neil Tunison, county engineer, he was actually on the board with me at that time.
I believe you mentioned that, come to think about it.
Barney Wright, who is the currently, what is he, treasurer?
Treasurer, yeah.
Yeah. And
I'm trying to get a hold of him. So.
And he actually was in charge of the trust department at LCNB, Lebanon Citizens.
Mm-hmm.
He was there for a great number of years, and he was also. I'm trying to think where he was actually on trustees at the time as was, but he was involved there. Anyways, yeah, trustees are just involved in maintenance of the building, make sure bills are paid, and review the insurance and just all that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And then of course elders are in charge of more sort of governing the local church, maybe getting involved with the national church. And just kind of, I hate to use the word politics, of the governing, of making sure, hey, the preacher's preaching what he's supposed to, kind of thing.
Right.
And just making sure that all the activities, everything's being coordinated and that we're following what we believe theologically as Christians. Right. And everything that, is the Bible being preached, and are we doing what we're supposed to be doing? Yeah. So that's the job of the elders.
It makes sense too, because if you have an overarching church, then you need some sort of communicate with that.
And you have to communicate up there and then communicate down with the individuals. Yeah, mm-hmm. Yeah. And then another thing I've also done during all these years is be involved in the contemporary worship service at LPC. I play the drums.
Oh, I see what you mean by contemporary.
Yeah,
gotcha.
There's the more traditional in the sanctuary with pipe organ, and all of the what church has typically looked like forever, or at least a long time, versus kind of what's developed in the last maybe 20 to 30 years, more of a contemporary evangelical.
Bringing in the acoustic guitar.
And maybe a little more audio video stuff and all that sort of thing. Which that goes back to when I was in school. I was in marching band, played drums. Marching band, varsity, junior varsity and varsity basketball, and JV and varsity track. So
a little bit of everything though.
Yeah, as well as also there again, all the way back in school, I've taken care of our 4-H animals and showing animals at the fair. So yeah, I had a full schedule.
Oh.
Yeah.
I know some of the I did a little bit of marching band in high school too. I did a bass drum.
Okay.
Actually. So
yeah.
I get it. It's, but
yeah.
they like to keep everybody doing just that usually because they. It's.
Yeah, I played the snare for a couple years. Then I played the triples and such in marching band. The triples or the multiples,
The quads.
The quads, yeah. Yeah.
I get that.
Yeah, and even played the piano way back when.
Ooh,
I was pretty good. I was actually pretty good on piano, but you couldn't carry a piano in marching band, so.
Piano's a little bit. You can always drag it on the field, but.
Yep. So yeah, and so I was Ag Urban and Southwest Landmark, and I've also served on the board of trustees at Farm Bureau for one term, somewhere back in there. I don't know if that was in the 90s or early 2000s. Then was elected as a Soil and Water Conservation District Supervisor. Served 3 terms, three-year terms there, so that's 9 years. And then decided not to run again for election. And I think it's been 2 full years now that I have not been on that board there. Thoroughly enjoyed that time there. Thoroughly enjoyed the time on Agri-Urban and on Southwest Landmark with all those farmer directors.
I'm sure you have more time now too.
Yeah, because it's just one meeting a month, last couple hours. Well, yeah, it's not one meeting a month, the last couple hours. It's like one meeting a month, but it might be maybe as little as 4 to maybe as much as 6 or 8 hours. But the Soil and Water Conservation District has grown enormously, and it grown quite a bit before I joined. But then even in the 9 years that I was there, office staff and everybody who was involved, and I can't quite think now, maybe, is there like 8 or 9 people on staff, maybe? Maybe even 10 or 11. So it's not just something that maybe you can, we can have a 2-hour meeting and talk about everything for a month, we're good to go. There's more involved.
Oh yeah, they moved into the newer spot there compared to there was in the 90s. I think they just had a small building up.
Oh yeah, and even back then, I can remember, and John Tachenko, you made reference to him. He was actually, but he was with NRCS, which is the national level, but he was the local guy. But there was only like about maybe 3 or 4 people in the office. Yeah, but as Warren County has transitioned largely from quite a bit agricultural to quite a bit more suburban, there's been a lot of things in the soil and water conservation scope that's like, well, how can they stay relative as an organization? Well, there's a lot of urban soil and water issues that aren't the same thing as what's out on the farm. There's a lot of stormwater and doggone it, lost that train of thought with stormwater and just planning and development. Where they need zoning and planning and everybody creating all these darn subdivisions. Well, they need someone with some expertise about drainage and soil conditions and water that can advise them. And so a lot of that kind of got shoved over slowly, but for good reason, into soil and water. And some other things through the county engineer's office, they're needing more assistance, so soil and water, we've got to have somebody kind of maybe there that's dedicated a little more to that way.
Yeah.
Some other things that have come about, things like land preservation, where it's like, hey, we're gobbling up all these farms, there ain't going to be anything left. Well, so there are certain organizations outside the scope of soil and water that are concerned with creating funding to people who want to preserve their land, preserve the farmland, not let it get sold into a subdivision. So that's kind of has fallen into under the authority of soil and water. But I thoroughly enjoyed being there 9 years. One part of that was we would, once a year, there would be a national meeting. Well, we would usually go to that, almost all of us on the board. And I thoroughly enjoyed meeting with representatives all across the country and hearing what their struggles or issues or things were that they had to deal with, whether it was in Maine or New York or Georgia or Florida or Texas or California or Washington.
Yeah.
All sorts of interesting things. And, maybe a lot of times none of it had to do with what we were trying to figure out here, but occasionally it's like, they've had to deal with this, even though it's down there in Texas, well, that actually, we might be able to make that idea work. It might be a little different, but I thoroughly enjoyed all that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You see a little through line there, and you're like, okay, I can
Yeah,
work that
yeah,
on my farm
yep,
more.
yep.
I can talk to them.
Yep,
Yeah, I
yep.
get that. Going down the list here.
Yeah, no, that's good.
Maybe they live at the same spot.
Yeah, my wife and I, she was originally from Iowa, and we're both remarried. Our first marriages didn't end well for either of us. So after a long period of years, we were able to connect. And then that's why I say we have 5 boys: Austin, Alec, Harrison, Evan, and Stephen. And but we've been married now 18 years, and we live out there on the farm. But yeah, I would always enjoy going back to visit with her family. They were in Iowa, although they weren't out on the farm.
Oh.
It was you don't have to go very far, and you're out in farm country, and I love that out there. Yeah.
I wonder how Iowa's changed. I can't imagine.
And
it's changed.
it's changed dramatically. I mean, I can see that in the 18 years of going back and forth out there. It's just like here, driving up to, like you mentioned, driving up to Austin Landing, or driving from Lebanon down to Mason. Yeah, it's the same thing out there. We talked about that a little bit before the camera started.
Yeah.
It's an issue. This, suburban sprawl and the disappearance of farmland.
Yeah.
It's an issue nationwide.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting.
Yeah. But I've lived where I live now. That's where I grew up,
Yep.
with the exception of about 10 years where I lived on one of our other farms, about 4.5 miles down the road. And then Mom and I switched, because the place where I'm at now is a little more of the central headquarters of the farm. There's quite a bit more land right on the farm where I live now.
Gotcha. So
Yeah.
a little sporadic.
Yeah.
I follow you.
Yeah.
What's your average day now versus back when you first started and got your feet wet out of college?
We have a lot less livestock because, like I said, when I was growing up, it was just more typical that farms, they were a little smaller, but they were way more diversified. So they had some livestock, maybe not a lot, but they had some, where now it's quite a bit more typical that farms are, at least a conventional type of farm, is a good bit larger, and they raise corn and soybeans, and they have possibly no animals at all, except they might have a small amount of 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 cows, or they might raise a pen full of 5 or 10 hogs for their own freezer hogs and some barbecue, but even that's unusual. So yeah, when we were growing up, we had a lot of cattle, we had a lot of hogs, we raised a lot of corn and very little soybeans, because with all that livestock, you fed them corn, and hay. You chopped corn for silage for the cattle. That's where you chop the whole plant while it's still slightly green, and you blow it into the silo. It packs. It's almost like making sauerkraut on an incredibly industrial size scale. Because what it does then, you're cutting it while it's still green, chopping it real fine, the whole plant, stalk and corn, and then it ferments in the silo, turns to silage, makes it more digestible, and the protein goes up. So you have a much more powerful feed than just feeding them corn for grain. That's grain corn. Yeah. Now the hogs, that's for cattle. Entirely different feed system than with hogs. Hogs, yeah, it's just shelled corn and soybean meal and grind it up, pretty fine. But yeah, in today's world, I mean, if you have livestock, you probably have, a barn that holds 1,000 or maybe a couple,
Yeah.
So I don't feed nearly as many cattle. I still feed. I always like to say, short and easy story of our farm is 1,000 acres and 100 cattle. I have cows. I calve in the fall, which is kind of non-traditional, big from the spring. Started that a long time ago, basically because the cattle cycle, market cycle, kind of has a pretty well-defined high and low of the year, and it's based on when the cattle are born. Well, traditionally, they're normally born in the spring, so then that means by the time they're ready for market as a market animal, that you're hitting kind of like April, May, June, July time period. So a little over a year later. So I started calving in the fall, in September, October. That way, it requires a little more feed and work in the winter when I'm not out in the field doing my corn and soybeans. But it also means that about a year later, when they're full-size ready for market, January, February, March, that's one of your higher market times. But now most of the cattle I feed 70 a year or so in the feedlot, but I sell them almost direct as freezer beef.
Oh.
So, been doing that for quite a number of years. Have also done the same thing with hogs, although not on nearly as much of a scale. And so, my average day now compared to what it used to be, I still spend some time feeding cattle, but it's not like we used to. When you've got 400 or 500 cattle on hand every day, that's a lot of work.
Compared to 70.
Yeah, compared to 70. And especially in the wintertime, that's when it's just horrible. I hate winter. Always have. Because of that reason, because I got to go outside and work in it.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Keep yourself busy, I suppose. But
yeah. And, summertime, we're still out in the fields, kind of like we always were. It's just we're using bigger equipment that covers more ground faster, but we're still putting in the hours. Yeah. Yeah.
We talked a little bit about your family already, but we can go into significant events if you're interested.
Yeah. For us, I'd say a pretty significant event. My dad died, he was 66, which may or may not sound old or not. It's not that old. And I was 28. And I was already working, full time with him and everything, but boy, when you got to take over everything at that age, that was a pretty big deal.
A little surprising, yeah.
Yeah. But our family, we still get together. It's different than we used to be, but that's because as all the like I say, Dad was one of 4 boys. Well, it was easy for them to get together, and then when they got married, it's the same story as all families. And then at some point they start having kids. Well, now you got cousins. Well, then as everybody gets older, then maybe they're old enough now, they're starting to get married. So now the family tree is starting to really get spread out. It becomes possibly very difficult for everybody to get together and keep, you can't all just be there Christmas morning anymore. It's like, now you got to kind of start trying to schedule, well, golly, we'll get together this weekend and that weekend. So in a lot of ways, like a lot of families, we're the same thing.
A lot of folk then.
Yeah. So there's just a lot of, that becomes a real challenge to manage.
Yeah.
And some families do it well, and then some, I don't know, not us, but some almost yell and scream at each other and never talk to each other again, So there's all kinds of those horror stories. That's not been our case, but so it's just the family. It just keeps getting bigger and more spread out, and I don't see some of my cousins that I did when I was growing up all the time. Mm-hmm. Well, that's because they've gotten a job, moved here and there, and well, now they've got their kids and cousins and in-laws, and it gets to be a real chore to still be in contact with each other. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've noticed it with my own cousins and family too.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same story everybody has. You know, and
Mm-hmm.
and America at large is maybe not quite as, you know, small community oriented as we were in that 50 years ago, and then of course definitely 100 years ago. And of course, working at Records and Archives, you're kind of the history geek guy. Well, and I love history too. So I mean, we know that from just the way the country has gone. People used to live in a much more tight-knit, small community, and they didn't travel as far. And now, as time has gone on, and technology, and of course cars and planes, it's nothing to have. Well, you know, I got a brother who lives, 4 states away to the east, and I got a sister who lives 3 states away to the south, and my mom and dad, they live 5 states away to the north.
You
You know,
yeah, it's technology has brought us closer. And
technology has brought us closer, and it's also driven us apart.
Yeah.
Yeah. The ability to travel is incredible.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's just.
And it's maybe been that way my whole life, but it's definitely more convenient in some ways than it used to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't see too much of people just sticking around anymore, and whenever you see, that's what's come up across my list often enough is multi-generational farm families. Like you see them on the list with their plots out there, and you don't see a lot of that.
You don't see a lot of that, especially around here. It can still exist in more rural areas, but boy, you know, Warren County, there's like 300,000 people here. We're usually, for like the last 20 years, we've been in competition with Delaware County, just north of Columbus, as the #1 growing county in Ohio. And so it's just suburban sprawl in our immediate area. Yeah, the multi-generational farm family is just kind of changing and disappearing.
Right.
You can still find that. It's rare. You can still find it if you go a little further away. Yeah.
But just a little harder to find, yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned when your father passed away when you were fairly young. Would you say that would be your greatest challenge in life, or would you like to highlight something else?
My greatest challenge in life is just trying to get through the year and keep the bills paid. You know, because farming, we go through a tremendous amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
Of our inputs are just horribly expensive and don't seem to. They fluctuate every year, but wow, and the cost of equipment, of course, the cost of land. I think I made mention of that. I don't know if it was on camera before, but and anybody that's running a small business, medium business, you know, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Farming is really, you know, in some ways it's a way of life, but that's how I earn my income. So it is a business, and I'm trying to manage it dollars and cents, just like anybody else.
Sure.
That's managing any kind of company. Because I still got all the same household bills that someone who is working, you know, Monday through Friday, they get their paycheck every other week or something. Mm-hmm. They've got their household bills. Well, so do I. And I've got to generate those household income bills out of my profit or loss statement from the farm.
Yep.
So
just having to spread that throughout the whole year.
Yeah, and I have to spread it out over the whole year. I got to manage that because, yeah, maybe my paycheck, it doesn't just come one time a year, but it might be highly concentrated in a certain season when I'm selling everything, and another certain season when I'm tending to buy everything. But I still got to pay some bills every month, just like everybody else. It's a huge challenge. Yes. Yeah.
What are some of your fondest memories?
Well, my younger sister, she gets angry at me because I can remember everything. You know, we'll be talking about stuff, and I'll say, "Don't you remember that?" Shoot. So yeah, I remember. I'm one of those kind of people that can tend to remember everything. You know, what's a fondest memory? Well, when you say that, I can think of about 50 things all of a sudden. You know, but which one? There's just. Yeah, it's. I don't know that I can come up with just 1 or 2 or even 5. I don't know. It's just sort of a thought of, and this is probably something that as people get older, they long for, I don't know, their childhood or their young adulthood. And yeah, just because things do change, especially, and again, I allude to, all this, the electronic technology that just invades our life every moment of every minute. And we didn't have that. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of hard to actually remember what that was like, but I do. And it was, I don't know how to describe it. It was just more enjoyable. Because sometimes this stuff is just so demanding upon us.
I mean, they call it push notifications for a reason.
For a reason. You're just getting pushed around all the time if you're paying attention to that. Mm-hmm. So, like I said, we used to ride bikes. A friend of mine, Chuck DeRay, Lebanon Police Department for a long time, but he was only like 3 or 4 miles from me. We'd ride our bikes up and down the road. I don't know. I mean, yeah, I still see people riding bikes around, but I'm not sure I would want, 8, 10, 12-year-old kids just kind of doing that like we used to. I don't know. We'd go camping in the backyard, which you could do today, but I remember that as a kid. I don't know, just some things we did that seemed so free and easy. And now you're everybody's constant beck and call. I don't know. I remember a lot of memories of when it used to be more regular. Had a lot of friends, sometimes from Springboro, sometimes from Waynesville. Come out, we'd be baling hay and straw all summer. Working with all those guys, and we were just goofing off as well as working hard. I remember those types of things. My grandma, my mom's mom, she was the only one of my grandparents that I remember. 2 of the 4 died before I was born. Grandpa Miller, my dad's dad, though, died. I was probably only about 3 or 4, so I don't really remember him. My mom's mom died, I was about 13. I remember staying over at her house as a kid. There on Mound Street. Just those type of things. Normal memories that most people might have.
Yeah.
That would be specific. Here's something that for some reason I just thought of. I can remember going to Christmas Eve church service as a kid, and there was actually snow on the ground. But back when I was a kid, there weren't too many deer around. I mean, really not at all. And here we are, we drive down the lane, and for crying out loud, 2 deer jumped the fence right in front of us, in front of the car. And of course, Mom and Dad had made, were those reindeer? Was that Santa Claus reindeer or something? That's something that's changed is, things like that, the wildlife. There didn't used to be many deer. There also was not nearly as much of this dang honeysuckle brush everywhere. The kids and I will go out and we'll be clearing the fences, of course we're using probably a skid loader or some type of machine, and sometimes we're not, and they kind of grumble about it. I'm like, I don't remember doing this as a kid, guys, because this stuff didn't exist.
Yeah.
It's all that invasive species, and that kind of lays into, some of the soil and water conservation, aspect of, hey, we gotta make sure people know some of the stuff you're planting in your yard, these ornamental trees and bushes, is like, hold on here. We got to get rid of those because those things actually overtake things.
Yeah.
So, any specific of those memories, I can think of 50 of them. I can think of being in the basement with my cousin Tom, and we were doing model trains and had the model train layout that they had. And of course, Uncle Jim and Aunt Helen, they had a swimming pool. We didn't, so we'd go over there and hang out as a kid. Yeah. And other things that have changed on the farm. And being at the fair, the county fair as a kid, showing animals, compared to how it is today and how the fair is today. And it's still kind of the same, but it's still significantly different. I can remember some of the old barns that used to be there that aren't there anymore. And just how things used to work, showing animals that is still, like I say, you're kind of doing the same thing today, but it's not the same thing at all. It's totally different. Yeah.
It's an odd feeling.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah.
Do you have any stories that your family's passed down?
Yeah, there's. I don't know that any of them are particularly special. I'll probably think of 30 or 40 of them, when we leave and the camera's turned off.
Don't worry, there's the question at the end asking if there's anything else you'd like to mention. So
Yeah, yeah.
But I get it.
Yeah. Other than, like I talked about, maybe, but that was involved me as a kid, being at a 4-H meeting, Armstrong, we're out there looking for cattle and a brand new calf out in the field. Yeah, Dad was one of 4 boys, and there's a lot of just little stories about how they, were rough and tumble little guys, just all over the place, those kind of things.
Oh, yeah. It'll hit you later, probably.
Yeah, yeah. I can remember one thing, and this goes back to, my Uncle Marion, so this would be my great Uncle Marion, and he was an engineer, but I think one of the first days he actually went to work as an engineer after he graduated college and everything, he had to take a boat because it was during the flood, the Great Flood in Cincinnati at the time. He worked for Procter & Gamble. Yeah, so that was a little story. But then I remember him also telling that when he went to school, it was in Merrittstown, which is on Route 48 north of the vocational school, and just he would tell some stories about how the playground was out there. They would do some thing during recess, something flipping rocks with a spoon, and everybody's like, geez, that sounds like it's kind of a hazardous place to be, Dad and Uncle Jim went there as kids before they went to Lebanon, because this was in the day before all the consolidated school districts, but they would talk about, they were able to get their work done in class in Lebanon pretty fast. And like, what's up with that? Well, because a lot of the kids, when they were brought from these rural school districts into the consolidated school districts in town, they weren't considered to be as smart, hadn't been taught as well as the kids in town. So they maybe gave them different work to do.
Oh.
And they they were able to whip through it, and it's like, what's the problem here?
What's happening?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah. Uncle Marion was on the cover of what was it? GE, General Electric Monthly Magazine.
I didn't know he had a monthly magazine.
Yeah, I think I'm saying that right. I can see the cover, I can see the picture, and it's just some advertisement about using electricity out on the farm, and had some electric motor spinning something, and Uncle Marion's a little kid, hiding behind the door of the barn, peeking his head out, something like that. He also built Holly Hills Golf Course when it was going on. He owned that for a great number of years. And then he lived in Cincinnati, and he would drive up to go golfing. He was an avid golfer. He would come up and check on the golf course. Of course, he owned the place, but they'd stop by the farm. And I think he drove a Volkswagen, and I don't remember. It had to be a Volkswagen Rabbit, when that was kind of a popular new car from Volkswagen. Of course, at the time, he probably would have been, he would be 103 years old. At the time, he was probably in his 60s.
You think you're going to get your own Volkswagen Rabbit?
Yeah. I for some reason, I remember that. I remember my Uncle Lee, he had a car that, and I think it was a Cougar. Would that have been a Mercury Cougar. But anyways, it had the retractable headlights, and when you turn the headlights on, they would do some sort of motion like that to come out. I remember that. As a kid, I thought that was a pretty cool car.
The coolest thing in the world,
Yeah.
I remember seeing them too.
Yeah.
What would you say you're most proud of?
Wow. Just maybe that because of the challenges of farming, that I've been able to just keep, I hate to say it, so it seems like a pretty low bar to clear, but just keep the farm operating and growing and continuing, because it is a huge financial challenge to keep a farm business going, over a long period of time, not just during my life, but to continue what my parents did before me.
Right.
And to make a multi-generational farm, and then serve on some of the board of directors and supervisors that I have, and be able to contribute in a publicly elected leadership role, that people out there were actually willing to vote for me as, we like that guy. Well, he can do a good job, directing and being part of this organization that has something to do with leadership.
Yeah.
Proud that my wife and I have 5 boys that are out there living an adult life, which there again seems to be an awful low bar to clear in today's world. But there's so many folks where the families are a bit of a mess, and the kids are not moving forward in life
sometimes.
Yeah. So that our kids are doing well. Proud that I've been able to contribute in church, and especially in the music ministry, and be there to just do the things that we as a church have been able to do and minister to people. I'm proud to be part of that as a ongoing concern, because there again, even in today's world, it seems like a low bar to clear, but not all churches are particularly thriving and still relevant. A lot of them are kind of fallen by the wayside.
Yeah.
So, and again, it seems like, that none of those things, that's what you're supposed to do in life. Well, a lot of people and places and businesses and organizations, they aren't getting it done.
Yeah.
So just because it's a huge challenge just to keep things going, to keep the daily grind going, keep the bills paid, and to keep moving along.
Sometimes it takes a little more than people really admit it.
Yeah. So I'm not too often impressed by, and maybe it's the wrong thing not be impressed by people who do accomplish great and grand things. It's just I'm focused on simple and daily and normal, and it's like you do that and get it done and do it well and keep going on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Who would you say is your greatest influence as a?
And my parents, my dad, and just because out there on the farm, not that we lived an isolated life, but I don't know, we all had quite a bit to do and get done, and we all had a role to play, and everything about it was stable and secure and safe. And so, my parents, they had to, they're a big influence, especially my dad, even though he's been gone for all these years, because I still think about him every day, very much so.
Especially given that you share the same profession.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
And life has turned out differently than I thought it would. but I wouldn't say that it's turned out, negatively or bad or something. There's just a great number of roads, avenues, paths that you can take in life. A handful of them are bad choices, and a lot of them are good choices, and which way you going to go.
Yeah. It's a lot to it, and
there's a lot to
engineer,
it.
Farmer.
Oh yeah.
College.
And it goes kind of for anybody and everybody. It's like there's a great number of choices you can make. A lot of them are great, and that's almost the darn shame of life.
Yeah.
That we don't get to choose all of them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things I would love to do or have done. Any one of them might have changed things entirely and incredibly different.
Yeah.
So it's definitely different, but it's still pretty good, and so for anyone who might be listening, who knows how long this stuff will actually last. Will this stuff only be around for 5 or 10 years? Or will the stuff be uncovered in some ruin, 5,000 years from now? And of course, then they won't be able to understand it anyways.
Right.
But, advice to people as they go about their way. Well, I just said, there's a great number of choices you can make. All of them can be great. You just, enjoy your life and do the right thing for the right reasons. As far as farming and agriculture and environmental, everything that involves kind of the natural world that I work in outside, we have to take care of it, which is what I've been trying to do. It's what the vast majority of us try to do anyways.
Yeah.
Partially because, if you don't, it's going to affect you probably negatively, probably pretty quickly. Well, then that obviously puts you out of business. It affects your profit and your income. Unfortunately, everything seems to almost boil down to the almighty dollar.
Yeah.
And not everything does revolve around the dollar. So there's a lot of good life to live that doesn't involve just, always chasing the money. But yeah, in the farming and agriculture world, the land is a pretty important thing to take care of, and it's amazingly productive. That's one thing I am often in awe of, and I wonder about. It's like all the incredible things that can grow from the soil and out of the water. It's like, wow, it's an incredible abundant resource, which we are very lucky, fortunate, blessed to have in Warren County, in Ohio, in the Midwest, in the United States. Some countries just their natural resources are limited, or they may be great, but it's like you can't really do much with them. So it's really a great blessing, particularly, like I say, in our part of the world where we live here. There's so many things that exist. Again, soil, water, forest, the air. It's just, there's an incredible abundant resource. Probably 100 times more than what we can actually recognize.
Yeah. Yeah, they might discover something else.
They're just things that we discover all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So advice is just, I'm not that old to give great advice other than, do the right thing for the right reason. Get off your behind and go do something. Don't sit around and wait for somebody else to give it to you and depend on the government or this organization or that or something. It's like, go get it done for yourself. I've been blessed that, my parents were very successful, so I've had a little bit of a benefit head start, but that also means I've maybe got 2 or 3 times as much to lose, because I started with a little extra, Well, if I ran it into the ground, then I blew all that plus what I could have done, you know. So that is sort of my long rambling advice. Hopefully somebody somewhere can boil that down to something a little more succinct and usable.
We'll edit it. We can edit it for you.
Yeah, we'll edit that. Oh my!
One word is going to be strung together. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I don't think so. Just because I've rambled on probably more than enough that.
A good amount.
Yeah, a good amount, And how long have we been here? I don't even know.
We talked a little bit beforehand. So
yeah.
The recording's about 125.
Yeah, and I don't know whether there's some things that we visited with that I didn't add on tape.
Fair enough.
So.
Did we touch on just about everything?
We touched on just about everything, but
yeah.
I appreciate the opportunity to be here. A bit surprised and yet humbled that you would ask me, because like I say, I'm not that old. I'm only 61. I hope to live as long as Uncle Marion, so that means I got 42 more years to go.
There you go.
Yeah.
Still farming, I'm assuming.
Yeah, hope so. But at some point I have to let the boys, the one or two or three or four, whoever knows that might actually be involved with it, and then that maybe give me some time to try all the things I've wanted to try all these years that I didn't have time for because I just too busy trying to get the work done.
You did one vacation and you want a couple more. Right?
Well, yeah, and my wife and I, we do some vacationing, and we definitely thoroughly enjoy that. And you do have to go get away, so that you can come back and be refreshed and start all over again.
Of course.
No, but thank you. I do appreciate it. I'm like I say, a bit surprised to be invited and yet humbled, so hopefully there's something that's valuable that you can glean from this.
Well, thank you for coming in, and I'm sure we will.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Let's end the recording.